He faces an additional 54 felony charges in his 3 remaining criminal cases. So, Dan, what are you watching out for next?
Well, I don't think that any of those cases are likely to happen before the election, but obviously the political consequences is something that we are going to get some information on relatively soon. Once polls start coming out, you can see whether this had any impact. So that'll be one thing to look for. Then, as you move, closer to the actual election day, I think you start to say, okay, is this something that has legs? Are people still talking about the fact that he was convicted, or like so many stories, is it sort of get washed away? I mean, think of all of the controversies that seem like, wow, this is an earth-shattering moment over the last 8 years with Donald Trump, and many of them simply people don't remember anymore, or if they do, they just sort of bake it in. And so, I think how long this is a dominating part of the conversation will be interesting to see. And then, of course, if he's elected, well, then we're in for more unprecedented moments. Okay, so there are 2 federal investigations. Are those going to be immediately shut down? If so, what's going to be the blowback from that? There's also another investigation in Georgia in which he's been indicted. And how does that play out? Does that go to trial while he's the sitting president? So there are all of these different things in play right now that we're just going to have to see what happens over the next few years. But there's going to be no shortage of things to look out for.
Something that you said that stuck out to me was we're in store for more unprecedented moments. And you also said, like, looking back at the past 8 years, I mean, there has been history-making moment with Donald Trump, with chaos and controversy. Because you've covered him so heavily the past years, does that work in his favor that he is creating so many unprecedented moments that the shock value is gone for a lot of Americans?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's not just that the shock value is gone because they've seen controversy before. It's also that Donald Trump is a master at blunting controversy and making it into something that what would be death blows for every other politician in the world just sort of bounce off of him after a little while. Remember, this hush money case, comes from a payment and a reimbursement involved with that payment that came right on the heels of the Access Hollywood tape, which large parts of the Republican Party of the country thought was going to end Donald Trump's campaign. That was in October of 2016. And then the next month, he defeats Hillary Clinton and becomes the president. So that's just one instance in which Donald Trump's been able to move past this stuff. And as that's been happening, all of these different controversies, and he's, stiff-armed one and another, he's also been very actively working to discredit the institutions that most people look to as neutral arbiters of what's going on. So at one point that was the press and certainly the justice system. And Donald Trump, even before he was convicted here, said, even Mother Teresa would get convicted based on these instructions. And that's a very clear sign of sort of the master at work, saying, I'm delegitimizing this process before we even know the results of this process as an insurance policy for if the verdict goes the wrong way, as it did for him.
And after the verdict, there were memes floating around on social media with Trump and Jesus, Trump and Mother Teresa. So that messaging has been going around since the verdict. Dan Alexander, per usual, thank you for the conversation.